So let's talk about how you can generate more revenue in exchange for less patients and really put pricing under the microscope. Welcome to the Business of Hearing podcast. My name is Ollie Luke, and if you're a private practice hearing care leader that wants to grow private pay patients, grow recognition, revenue, and reputation, and become the obvious choice in your community, then you're in the right place. Now, this is a big subject to unpack because I really want to get as deep as possible on pricing, psychology of pricing, how patients make decisions, and why you may be standing in the way of your practice growth. So bear with me on this. But, fundamentally, let's just zoom out. 3 ways to grow a practice, right? You get more patients, you get them to spend more, and you get them to spend more often. Now, marketing as a whole, especially in our industry, all the obsession comes on how do we get more patients, which I completely get. The 2 levers that you can pull that will make a more instantaneous impact on your practice and long-term growth, lifetime value of patients and everything else are those other 2 levers. How do you grow patient revenue? How do you get them to spend more? And how do you get them to spend more often? And I really want to unpack that and look at some of the leaks that occur in most practices. And I'm saying practices, right? This is all businesses, right? But let's just apply this through the lens of yourself as a practice leader. And the first big pricing leak where there may be opportunity for you to collect more money in exchange for doing exactly what you're doing now is simply realignment. Because look, the pattern that I've seen, and I can only base it on my own experience, what a lot of practices do is if you ask them why is their pricing a certain way, the answer is either I looked at our competitors when I opened and we kind of based it roughly on them. We didn't want to be too cheap. We didn't want to be too expensive, somewhat around the same as them. The second one is the manufacturers helped us tell us how much it should be. Or the third one is we just did what my last employer, the old owner, used to do. Like there's a lot of just take what they used to do and then apply it for today. Now that is dangerous and scary in a few ways, right? Because there's no logic baked into that. It's very much based on, dare I say, the fear of getting it wrong that you just play as safe as possible, which I get. But fundamentally, there's a few things we need to consider. Number one is, who is your practice built to serve? Because if your practice is built to serve patients that want the finest, the highest level, and that's the brand and story you're trying to tell, then damn right your pricing needs to align to that. If you walk past a really nice looking steak restaurant and you walked in and a steak was at $10, you'd go, something's not right. Is the steak frozen? Are the chefs out on bail conditions? What is the story here that makes it doesn't align? We need to ensure, first of all, there's an alignment there for that to be right. And then second of all, we need an alignment for today. Because I'm very, very certain the prices that you set, whether that was 1 year ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, that you may have adjusted with inflation slightly. What you do today versus what you did then is probably very, very different. The standard of care, the way that you do things, the protocols that you follow, all of that stuff naturally needs to be valued for today's world. But what lots and lots of businesses do, not just practices, is they set their pricing. They then get a lot better at delivering the outcome the person's trying to buy, and they keep the price the same. So what they're selling today versus what they were selling then is very different, yet the price remains the same. And usually it's fear of putting prices up that hold a lot of people back from doing so. But let's just address that fear of putting prices up first of all. Who's going to notice? Serious question. You put your prices up. Let's say you put them up by $1,000. Who is fundamentally going to notice? Because it's not new patients. They don't know what you charged yesterday, last week, last month, last year, nor does it really matter to them. They're making a decision based on today. Your existing patients who may have bought hearing aids from you 4 years ago and are now making a decision on whether to invest with new technology, they're coming to you with a decision of going, oh, wow, you're more expensive than you was in 2022. Is it a surprise to them that your costs have gone up? Everything else has gone up in the world, right? The gas for them to get to you, the electric bill that they paid when leaving the house this morning, the coffee that they stopped and got from Starbucks, everything's gone up in price. The fact that your service, care, treatment and expertise has not, if it was the same, I think that would be a concern. The only people that know that your price has gone up and have to deal with it are you and your staff. Now, if your staff have an issue asking for the right level of money in order to pay for their wages and support the business, support patients, then that's one puzzle. If you've got that issue, then that is another puzzle. But this sometimes is why we're in our own way of the success of our business, because we're scared to ask for the money that we deserve because we either don't believe we're worth it, which is a completely different challenge to a pricing challenge, and don't get them two things mixed up, or you've got a team culture that the team are trying to borrow their own buying habits, and I wouldn't spend $8,000, therefore I feel awkward asking for it, which is a leadership issue. So sometimes the price becomes the issue, whereas in reality, it's a leadership issue or it's a headship issue. So getting that bit right is so key. But price realignment for today is fundamental, because what you deliver today needs billing and charging for today, not a version of yesterday. So getting that right is so key. The second big leak that many businesses have and practices have is no planned second sale. Now, what I mean by this is, look, hearing care has been built on a model really of a transaction, right? People pay you money in exchange for hearing aids plus service. You deliver that for them. The more you can be conscientious of the journey that you're going to take them on, because the goal when a patient first comes to you is this should be their first set of devices of many devices over their lifetime. What they're coming to you with, a hearing challenge, is something that is probably going to impact them for the rest of their life unless some miracle drug is invented, right? Which means that if they come to you and they're 60 years old, hopefully there's 20 to 30 years of patient in front of them. There's a runway there that you have where you can be their partner for life. Now, if you just sell the one-off solution, the transaction, give them hearing aids, wish them on their way, and say, come and contact us if you have any issues, then the likelihood of them being a patient for life is slightly diminished. They're going to become an experienced hearing aid wearer, get to year 4, get to year 5. They may go for a cheaper option than you if they just believe they need a set of hearing aids. But if you can start this as the journey and say, okay, we're going to start on this journey, just so you know, this is probably going to be for the rest of your life, unless a miracle drug is invented, blah, 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 blah. So let's get you started. Just to set expectation here, you're going to need these. We're going to take you on this journey over the next 3 to 4 years to help you to achieve this outcome, look after you and ensure everything is optimized as much as possible and your hearing health is being monitored. At around the 4-year mark, we're probably going to have to explore the next set of hearing devices. What we are going to give you is a minimum guaranteed valuation on your devices, valid up to 48 months, which means before that 48-month mark, we'll be able to buy these back off you to help you step into something new, blah, 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 blah. But essentially, you're preempting the second sale. And the more you can do that and set that expectation, what you're doing is increasing frequency of purchase, which will grow lifetime value of the patient. But most private practices and most businesses just try and get focused on the transaction today, that they're not preempting the future much, which is a missed opportunity. Because if you can work on almost getting them pre-sold that second sale is going to happen, then they're 90% there and you just need to deliver on the promise of ensuring you achieve the outcomes, and it'll all come very, very naturally. But going back to number 1, realignment of pricing. Number 2, how can you get to preempt that second sale, which will then preempt the 3rd sale, 4th sale, 5th sale, and you can grow lifetime value of that patient significantly. We then get to the 3rd. And the 3rd one is a big one that impacts a lot of practices, which is accepted scope creep. Now, the biggest catalyst of this that I see is TPA, right? It's third party. Is patient comes, you're getting paid a specific fee to do a specific deliverable for that patient. You're fitting them, then there's a number of follow-up visits. But patient's got an issue, come in, we'll help you. You just want to help. That's the reason you're in the business. You care, you want to help, you want to do good work, you want to make people happy. And you're probably a little bit like me. You're a bit of a people pleaser, right? If somebody's in front of you with a challenge, you just want to try and help them solve it. The challenge is, if you're not being paid for it and you do it, then all of a sudden, we've got a puzzle. Your value per hour reduces, you're not getting paid, you set a bad precedent. As a result, you teach your team this is the way that we do things, and it can become a little bit of a vicious cycle. But this is where scope creep can become an issue. You agree this is what we've agreed, this is what's written down, this is the agreement, and then you break the agreement, the patient doesn't, which all of a sudden creates confusion. You don't create great precedent, and as a result, it bleeds into all areas of the business. Front desk start not charging for things they should probably charge for. Your providers don't really appreciate the brilliance they deliver, and it's like, oh, it only took me 5 minutes, no bother. And you're leaving hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars on the table. And training your patients, which means the day you fix this, the pain is significant, right? This is a big, big issue that happens in a lot of businesses and a lot of practices. And it does mean you need to tighten this as much as possible. A few little ways that you can do this that I've seen practices do is you could create a super invoice, or we'll call it a fictitious invoice, right? It's an invoice to show value, not really for any accountancy purposes. And at the end of the appointment, patient walks away and you say, okay, patient, here's what we've done today. We changed the domes, we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this. And the value of today's appointment is $220. But don't worry, you're covered by our service plan. I'll circle it. And remember, the date it expires is this. Something along those lines, where every time a patient walks away knowing the value they've seen, they see the itemized breakdown of the service that you deliver and how much it actually costs. And it ensures that they understand that value. It reinforces the value of the service plan they've stepped into. And it does mean that the day their service plan comes to an end, the pain becomes quite great, because all of a sudden you can make it clear you've reinforced this service plan exists and it's going to expire on this date. When it does expire, it creates enough friction that the patient needs to make a decision, because they know continuing to pay out of pocket is actually not going to be in their advantage. All right, what have we got for number 4? Leak number 4 that occurs in the pricing of many practices is simply confusion. A lot of practices, unfortunately, and fortunately in a way, have very complex pricing unintentionally. And it's complex because it's written in terms that the practice understands, but the patient doesn't understand. To the point that you may even have done the work to say that you'll fit the patient with loaner devices if they have a repair or a loss. Great. It's a great line item. What does it mean to the patient? Because have you ever been to your car's broken down, you take it to the dealership, it needs some work doing on the engine, right? What do you want? You want to understand what they're trying to do. If they just give you a list of, say, okay, here's the 15 things we're going to try to do for you, and give you the technical work that the mechanics understand, your mind's completely blown. And this is the same with you when you explain what they're getting. It needs to be written in the language that patients understand. So if it's loaner devices, in brackets, ensuring you're never without devices, right? Just always, what is this for you? The more you can build that into your pricing, the more you simplify it, the more you remove confusion from it, the more you remove friction from it, the easier it is for people to say yes. But often, that is one of the simplest ways that you can drop a leak out of your pricing, is simplify it. It means more people say yes, more people move forward. All of a sudden you collect extra thousands of dollars, not through doing anything significantly different, just by better articulating, better packaging, and better explaining it in layman's terms that the patient understands. So dare I say, dumb it down. Write it like this is for a 5th grader. Like, the more you can simplify it so the patient knows what it is without your audiology degree, the better. Like, big words are great for you, not particularly that great for the patient. And then we come on to the 5th one, which is really around the psychology of numbers. Because often when we're looking at our pricing, what we don't appreciate, and I've learned this the hard way, is individuals make pricing decisions typically based on emotional brackets. So anything up until like a few $100s, it doesn't require much research, doesn't require much thinking. It can be an impulse-related decision. Anything between like that $500 to $1,500 then becomes a little more weighted. People want to do a bit of research, they want to take a little more time, and all of a sudden it's a little like the hundreds make a difference. Something between 900 and 1,200 makes a difference. But typically, when that $5,000 to $8,000 mark starts, there's a lot more autonomy in it, because what do people believe? Well, they're looking at that and going, this is a significant decision. And when it's a significant decision, it means the decision weight doesn't particularly change if it's $6,000 or $6,400, right? It's a significant decision, which means those number switches don't actually change the psychological weight of the buying decision, but they allow you to collect more money. And you've got a lot more flexibility and autonomy in those numbers than you may believe. And there was a big study done on this, and I'm going to try and pull it now because when I read this study, it absolutely filled me with joy. So it says up to $100 feels casual, $100 to $500 feels like a let me think about it, $500 to $2,000 feels like a commitment, $2,000 to $5,000 feels like an investment, and beyond $5,000 feels transformational or high stakes. But the more you can start to understand those numbers, the better. Because there was a behavioral pricing specialist at the Simon Kucher and Partners, which is a consulting company. And what they found was that customers process prices in thresholds. So the psychological boundaries where a price starts to feel different, they describe these thresholds as a specific price point at which consumers perceive a meaningful change in the value of delivery, not tiny increments inside the same brand. So all of a sudden, you've got a lot more autonomy in those numbers than you may think. So let's break this down, because I don't think I've explained that very well. But if your pricing right now is, let's say you charge $7,000 for premium hearing aids, then I will challenge you to make that price $7,220. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, look, if somebody's going to say yes to $7,000, are they going to say no to $7,220? The weight of buying decision doesn't really change, but the numbers do. Very few people are going to say yes to $7,000, no to $7,220. You've got a lot of autonomy in that. And all of a sudden, if you can collect an extra $220 over a few hundred transactions a year, then all of a sudden you've got an extra chunk of profitability directly in your pocket, because it may be slightly more on revenue, but it's significantly more in profit. But knowing you can just play with those numbers ever so slightly. As soon as that would have gone to 60 at 72.50, 73, 74, then all of a sudden it starts to become a $7,500 buying decision. There's just a slight nuance in the decision, right? But often if it's $69.90, it's a $7,000 decision. If it's $72.20, it's a $7,000 decision. You've got flexibility and autonomy to play in those numbers. And I've not explained that very well, but I would encourage you to play. Play and know that what pricing you put out for today doesn't mean you've committed to this for the next decade. You could put pricing, play with pricing, try something new today based on real world feedback, real world experience. You could adjust it tomorrow, next week, next month. You've got a lot more autonomy to play than you probably give yourself credit for. But there's so many leaks that exist in pricing, in all businesses and in practices like ours, that you can be collecting more money in exchange for the same work that you're doing, make more revenue in exchange for less appointments, and grow a more profitable practice in exchange of not particularly working harder, which I know goes against everything we're educated from kids. The harder you work, the more money you make. Sometimes just strategy over pure hard work is the approach. And I think getting these numbers right is one of the key ways to do it. So here's my goal for you. Some of the things that have stood out from you from this conversation. Please try it. Please look at your numbers and ensure they're correct for today. Please ensure you're preempting that next sale. Please ensure you're making it easy for better articulating what you do in layman's terms. Please ensure you're playing with your numbers, knowing that sometimes adjusting those numbers doesn't actually change the weight of the buying decision, but it collects you more money. But hopefully that was helpful. As always, I appreciate your ears, and I'll be back again next week with another episode.